The morning air inside Halstead Federal Bank felt colder than usual. The kind of cold that doesn't come from air conditioning, but from people who've forgotten what decency feels like. At the far end of the marble-floored lobby sat Clara Mason, professional Navy blazer. Straight posture, calm eyes that could silence a storm. Her briefcase rested neatly at her feet, zipper slightly open as if the contents were breathing. Across from her sat branch manager Richard Langford, a man who carried arrogance like a second skin. His office smelled of expensive cologne and stale power. He skimmed Clara's loan application with one hand and clutched his coffee mug with the other. Perfect credit score, verified federal income, no debts. A clean textbook submission, but then his eyes landed on the name at the top of the page. And everything inside him changed. Mason, he muttered under his breath. The word hit him like a curse. He froze. The paper trembled between his fingers. Then, with a violent jerk, he threw the file at her face. "Get your filthy hands off my desk," he shouted, his voice echoing through the office. The papers scattered like frightened birds, and his mug crashed to the floor, coffee bleeding across the marble. Clara didn't move. Not a word. Not even a blink. Richard's hands shook as he snatched up his phone. "Security," he hissed. "Now, call the FBI, tell them she's here. Her name's Mason." He looked at Clara like she was a ghost he'd prayed would never return. She checked her watch. 2:53 p.m. 10 years of waiting ending today. Moments later, Officer Troy Keller entered. Security uniform crisp, posture military. He scanned the chaos, the spilled coffee, the torn papers, the stillness of the woman in front of him. "Back office," he ordered. No argument. Clara stood slowly, calm as a judge in session, and followed him. The steady click of her heels was the only sound in the room. She left her briefcase behind on the chair. Its zipper cracked open just enough to show a glimpse of a manila folder inside. Richard turned away as soon as she disappeared down the hallway. His hand went white around the phone receiver. "It's happening," he whispered. "You were right." A Mason walked in, "Just like you warned." A voice on the other end spoke too softly to hear, but it drained the color from his face. "I know the protocol," Richard said quickly. "I'm on it." He hung up, his hand trembling so badly he nearly dropped the receiver. Across the lobby, Janet Wells, the veteran teller, watched everything. 20 years at this bank, and never once had she seen Richard lose control. Until now. She looked down and noticed one of Clara's papers near her feet. The name was printed in bold letters, Clara Mason. The breath left her body. Her knuckles turned white against the counter. Not again. Not another Mason. A memory slammed into her like a wave. 10 years ago, a man had sat in that same chair, Agent Daniel Mason, an FBI investigator with the same perfect credit, the same calm voice, and the same look of quiet certainty. He'd applied for a loan, denied, escorted out. 2 weeks later, dead. They called it suicide. But Janet had heard Richard on the phone the next morning. "The problem's handled," he'd said. "He won't be investigating us anymore." She had never forgotten those words. Now her stomach turned to ice. Her eyes flicked to Clara's briefcase. It sat there like an unopened confession. 3 steps away, she almost reached for it, fingers trembling, heart pounding, but stopped. Fear froze her in place. Some truths could destroy anyone who touched them. In the back office, Clara sat across a metal table. Her hands folded, posture perfect. Officer Keller stood near the door, uncertain. Something about this felt wrong. Too wrong. Richard stormed in moments later, sweat glistening on his forehead. "She's being handled," he said to Keller, but his eyes darted toward the hallway. "Preston's on his way. He'll take care of this." The name hung in the air like a threat. Preston Hale, the CEO of the bank. The man who'd built his empire on charm, fear, and secrets. Clara's expression didn't change. She just glanced at her watch again. 59 p.m. The countdown had begun. The briefcase still sat in the lobby, zipper open, waiting like a loaded weapon. Inside, a folder labeled Case File 7219, reopened, 10 years, 4 months, 17 days. The clock was ticking. Richard paced the small back office like a man walking the edge of a cliff. His shirt clung to his back, his hands shaking with every movement. Across the metal table, Clara sat in perfect stillness. The torn pages of her loan application lay scattered before her, each one like a piece of evidence at a crime scene. "Your numbers don't add up," Richard snapped, his voice cracking. Your income, your address, your employment. None of it matches. Clara's tone was calm, measured. Credit score 812. Verified employment, federal service. Address current and documented. What exactly doesn't add up, Mr. Langford? He shuffled papers, pretending to look busy, but his eyes betrayed panic. Irregularities, he muttered. Name one, she said quietly. He couldn't. His throat worked, but no words came out. She leaned forward, her voice cutting through the room. You're not questioning my finances, Mr. Langford. You're questioning my name. Her words hit him like a slap. He grabbed his phone again, retreating into the hallway. Get him here now, he whispered into the receiver. Yes, her. A Mason, she's asking questions like she knows. When he returned, his face was pale, his composure fractured. Why this branch? He demanded. Who referred you here? No one, she replied. I chose it myself. His phone buzzed again. He read the message and froze. He's here, he murmured. The footsteps arrived before the words did, measured, heavy, full of authority. Preston Hale entered the room like a storm in a suit. 70 years old, silver hair, eyes sharp enough to cut glass. The air shifted when he stepped inside. Even Keller straightened involuntarily. Preston stopped halfway into the room. His gaze met Clara's, and for a full 3 seconds neither of them moved. The world held its breath. Then softly, dangerously, he said, What's your father's name? Clara didn't blink. Agent Daniel Mason, Federal Bureau of Investigation, deceased. The color drained from Preston's face. His jaw locked, the muscle twitching. Get her out of here, he barked. Call the Bureau. Tell them we have someone impersonating federal personnel. Clara's voice was ice. I'm not impersonating anyone. I'm applying for a loan just like my father did 10 years ago at this very bank. Preston's jaw tightened. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do, she replied evenly. You denied Agent Mason personally. Perfect credit. Verified income. Stable federal employment. You turned him away because you knew who he was. Because he was already investigating you. A flicker of rage flashed across Preston's face. His breath grew shallow. Your father was... He stopped himself. Too late. Clara leaned forward, her eyes fixed on his. Finish it, please, he looked away. Call the FBI, he barked again, but this time the command sounded hollow. Richard grabbed his phone and began dialing with shaking hands. Clara checked her watch. 3:04 p.m. They're already coming, she said. Preston's head snapped toward her. What did you say? The FBI, they're already on their way. Have been since your first call. You're bluffing, he sneered. Clara held his stare, unblinking. You have 38 minutes left. The words hit him like a prophecy. He slammed his fist on the table. You come into my bank, throw around accusations, and threaten me? His voice rose with every word. People like you always think the system owes them something. You want power you didn't earn. Keller flinched at the words. Clara didn't. She tilted her head slightly. Say that again. For the record, Preston's mouth opened, but no sound came. The silence was worse than shouting. Thank you, Clara said softly. He frowned. For what? For saying it out loud. Her gaze shifted upward. Preston followed it. In the top corner of the room, a small red light blinked steadily. His face drained of color. That camera's been off for maintenance. Until someone turned it back on, Clara interrupted. Administrative override. Or FBI remote access. Take your pick. Preston stumbled back, panic rising in his chest. You can't, the phone in Richard's hand crackled. FBI field office, a voice said crisply. We have units already dispatched to your location. Ida 14. The phone slipped from his fingers. It hit the metal table with a sharp clang. 14 minutes, the voice repeated through the speaker. Please remain at your location. Federal agents are en route. The line went dead. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. Preston stared at Clara like she was something that had crawled out of his nightmares. Who are you? He whispered. She stood slowly, adjusting her blazer. Every motion deliberate. I'm the woman you just denied a loan to because of her last name. I'm the daughter of the man you destroyed 10 years ago. She sat back down, folded her hands, and smiled. And in 14 minutes, you're going to understand exactly what that means. Keller's throat tightened. His instincts screamed that something far bigger was unfolding. He wasn't guarding a suspect. He was guarding the truth. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. 14 minutes. 14 minutes until judgment arrived. Preston Hale had no idea that his empire had just begun to die. In the lobby, Janet Wells couldn't breathe. Her pulse hammered in her ears as her eyes locked on the briefcase still sitting in the chair where Clara had left it. That single object seemed alive, humming with danger. For 10 long minutes it had sat there, silent, waiting, while guilt gnawed at Janet's insides like acid. She told herself to ignore it. She told herself to stay quiet, just like she had a decade ago, but the truth kept whispering back. You heard him, remember? The problem's handled. Her fingers twitched. She looked around. The other tellers were pretending not to see what had happened. That was the rule in places like this. Stay out of trouble, protect your paycheck, and keep your head down. But 10 years of silence had cost her sleep, peace, and self-respect. Maybe today was the day she stopped hiding. 3 steps. That's all it took. Her shoes clicked softly against the marble floor. She reached the briefcase, heart pounding so loud she could barely hear herself think. Her hands trembled as she pulled the zipper open a little wider. Inside were neat stacks of documents, a few photos, and one worn notebook. On the cover, written in black marker, Dad's case, the truth they buried. Her breath caught. She flipped open the first page. The handwriting was steady, masculine. It started with a date from 10 years ago. Case 7219, discriminatory lending patterns, Halstead Federal Bank. 29 families. All minority applicants. All qualified. All denied, every single property foreclosed. Every single foreclosure purchased through a shell company, Silverline Holdings. Owners, Preston Hale and Richard Langford. The notebook trembled in her hands. She flipped page after page, names, dates, amounts, signatures. Then she found her own handwriting, her name, her initials on a denial form. Tears welled in her eyes. She'd been part of it, not knowing, but part of it all the same. Her knees nearly buckled, but she caught herself, closed the notebook, and took a deep breath. The air tasted like metal. There was no going back. She turned toward Preston's office. Each step felt heavier than the last. When she knocked, his sharp voice cut through the door. Not now. She pushed the door open anyway. Preston was pacing behind his desk, his face slick with sweat. He stopped mid-step when he saw her. What are you doing in here? It's about the Mason file, Janet said. The original one. From 10 years ago, his face went pale. What did you say? The one your office handled. The one where Agent Daniel Mason applied for a loan and died 2 weeks later. He was across the room in 2 strides, grabbing her arm hard enough to make her wince. You kept your mouth shut then, he hissed. You'll keep it shut now. Janet ripped her arm free. A man died, Preston. And now you're doing the same thing to his daughter. His face twisted into something ugly. You don't know what you're talking about. She took a step closer, her voice rising with every word. I know you made a call the morning after he died. I heard you. You said the problem's handled. I've lived with that for 10 years. But not anymore. Get out, he barked. No. Her voice didn't shake this time. I'm done protecting you. She turned and walked out before he could stop her. Her legs felt like lead, but her heart felt lighter than it had in a decade. At her station, she sat down and began typing. 10 years of loan records. Denials, approvals, income histories. Every pattern she'd ignored was right there, hiding in plain sight. She hit print. The printer came alive with a mechanical hum, spitting out pages of evidence, dozens, then hundreds. Richard, appeared behind her. What the hell are you doing? She didn't even look up. My job. Finally doing my real job. He lunged for the papers, but before he could reach them, Officer Keller stepped in, blocking his path. His hand rested on his holster, but his voice was calm. She's working. Leave her alone. You work for me, Richard snapped. I work for the law, Keller said. There's a difference. Richard backed off, his confidence cracking. Janet gathered the documents into a thick envelope, her hands steady now. She wrote on the front in bold letters, To Special Agent Cole Ramsey, Federal Bureau of Investigation. She didn't know who that was, but something in her gut said it was the right name. She placed the envelope on her desk, visible for everyone to see. The truth wasn't hiding anymore. In the back office, Clara sat motionless as the tension built outside. She didn't need to move. The walls themselves were closing in on the guilty. She checked her watch. 3:23 p.m., 18 minutes left. Officer Keller stepped into the room again. "Ma'am," he said carefully, would you like some water?" Clara smiled faintly. "No, but thank you, Officer Keller." He hesitated. "Are you really FBI?" Clara reached into her jacket and slowly pulled out a leather badge holder. When she flipped it open, the metal emblem caught the fluorescent light like lightning. Federal Bureau of Investigation. Section Chief Clara Mason, Financial Crimes Division. Keller's mouth fell open. "Keep that to yourself for 18 more minutes," she said softly. "Can you do that?" He nodded, still stunned. "Good. Because when this is over, I'm going to need men like you." She closed the badge and leaned back, calm as ever. Outside, the lobby felt different now. The fear had shifted. It wasn't pressing down on Clara anymore. It was pressing down on the men who'd built their power on lies. Janet sat at her desk, her evidence envelope gleaming under the light like a loaded weapon, and in the distance, 3 black SUVs rolled quietly through downtown traffic. Unmarked, windows tinted, engines silent. Inside the lead vehicle, Special Agent Cole Ramsey checked his watch. 3:26 p.m., he turned to his partner. "All units hold until 3:41, not a second before." "Why that exact time, sir?" Ramsey's voice was low, steady. "Because that's when Agent Daniel Mason's watch stopped 10 years ago. And his daughter wants them to feel every second of it." The young agent beside him swallowed hard. "She's really doing it, isn't she?" Ramsey nodded once. "She's finishing what he started." Back inside the bank, Preston Hale was unraveling by the minute. Sweat soaked through his collar, his voice breaking as he paced the interrogation room like a trapped animal. "You think you can destroy me?" he spat. "You think this ends with me?" Clara's voice was soft, almost kind. "It already has." Outside, the fluorescent lights flickered. The red camera light blinked steady in the corner, and the world waited for 3:41. Preston's composure was gone. His voice, once smooth and commanding, cracked like glass under pressure. He tore at his tie, his breathing shallow, his control slipping with every second. The room had shrunk around him, the walls closing in, the buzzing fluorescent lights turning into interrogation lamps. He grabbed the door handle and shouted down the hall, "Richard!" "Get Brock on the line. I don't care where he is, tell him to get here in 10 minutes. Richard hesitated, his face ashen. "Sir, Brock Sutherland retired years ago." "I said now." Preston roared. "He was the agent who handled the Mason case. He'll clear this up. He has to." The words sounded desperate even to him. Meanwhile, Clara sat in silence, her presence unshaken. Every tap of her watch echoed through the air like a metronome counting down his empire's final beats. Officer Keller shifted near the door, uneasy. "Sir, maybe you should wait for the FBI to arrive before making any calls." Preston turned on him, eyes wild. "You think I'm waiting for them to hang me? You think I'm just going to sit here and let some dead man's daughter ruin me?" Clara's voice was quiet but cut straight through his rage. "Not me, Mr. Hale, the truth." He froze. For a moment, the only sound was the hum of the lights and the faint ticking of Clara's watch. Then she stood, slow and deliberate, and opened her briefcase. The locks clicked like gunmetal. Inside was a stack of documents neatly arranged, but beneath them was something wrapped in soft leather. She pulled it out and unwrapped it carefully, as though it were sacred. A small badge glinted beneath the harsh light, her father's FBI badge preserved in a glass frame. Preston stumbled back, hitting the wall. "Where did you get that?" Her tone was calm, almost reverent. "From evidence storage. My father died with this badge on his desk. The same day you denied his loan." "You're insane," he snapped, though his voice shook. "That was ruled a suicide." Clara opened a folder and slid it across the table toward him. "Case number 7219, closed by Agent Brock Sutherland 3 weeks after my father's death. That same month, Sutherland received a $150,000 transfer into an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. Account number ending in 1163. The depositor was Silverline Holdings, of which you hold 60%. Preston's lips moved, but no sound came. His eyes darted over the papers, looking for a lifeline. You can't prove any of this," she smiled faintly. "I don't have to prove it. You're proving it for me. Every word you've spoken today, every lie, every threat, it's all on camera. Every second of it." He felt the blood drain from his face. "You set me up," he whispered. "No," she said softly. "You set yourself up 10 years ago when you had my father killed." "I just pressed record." Richard appeared in the doorway, his voice shaking. "Brock's on his way. 10 minutes out? Good, Preston said quickly, trying to find ground again. He'll fix this. Clara looked at her watch. He'll arrive just in time to see the end. Outside the room, Keller stood still, his heart pounding. He'd heard every word. Every lie was unraveling, every mask slipping. He thought of the report Richard had ordered him to sign earlier, how it said Clara had been aggressive, uncooperative, violent. None of it was true. He'd seen her. She hadn't raised her voice once. He pulled out his phone and opened his contacts. His thumb hovered over a number labeled Special Agent Cole Ramsey. He hesitated for just a second, then typed a message. Something's wrong at Halstead Federal. They're setting up a woman named Mason. She's not what they think. Please respond. He hit send. 3 seconds later, his phone buzzed with a reply. Already aware. Team en route. Protect her if necessary. Keller's eyes widened. Already aware. They'd known before he even sent the message. He looked through the small window into the interrogation room. Clara was still seated, her father's badge gleaming under the light. Preston's hands shook as he stared at it, his face gray and sweat-slick. Richard hovered in the corner, lost and terrified. Then footsteps thundered in the hallway. The door burst open. Brock Sutherland stood there, older now, grayer, his face lined with guilt. He froze when he saw Clara. His voice cracked. You're Daniel's daughter. Clara nodded once. Hello, Agent Sutherland. Or should I say, the man who called my father's murder a suicide. His eyes dropped to the documents on the table, to the badge in her hand, and then to the camera in the corner with its red light blinking steadily. His breath shuddered out. You told me it was fraud, he said to Preston. You didn't tell me it was her. Fix this, Preston snapped. Tell her your investigation was legitimate. Brock's shoulders slumped. His voice was hollow. I can't, not anymore. We had a deal. Preston shouted. The deal was silence, Brock whispered. Not perjury. He looked at Clara, eyes wet. Your father was my friend. I let them bury him. I can't lie for them anymore. Clara said nothing. She didn't have to. Preston lunged forward, his desperation boiling over. Keller intercepted him, pushing him back with a firm hand. That's enough, Keller said, his tone final. Clara checked her watch. 3:38 p.m. 3 minutes, she murmured. 3 minutes until what? Preston snapped. She met his eyes, calm as ice. Until justice walks through that door. He stared at her, lost between rage and fear. Brock leaned against the wall, trembling, and the ticking of the second hand grew louder, sharper, unstoppable. In 3 minutes, everything Preston Hale thought he owned, the bank, his reputation, his control, would belong to the truth. He just didn't know it yet. The air inside the bank felt charged, like a storm about to break. Preston stood frozen, sweat dripping down his temple, his thoughts racing in jagged bursts. Brock slumped near the door, unable to look up. Richard fumbled with his pen, scribbling false notes that his trembling hand could barely control. The lies poured from his ink like poison. Subject became aggressive, raised voice, made threats. But Clara sat perfectly still, her hands folded on the table. Her voice, calm and deliberate, broke the quiet. You're documenting a lie, Mr. Langford. That's obstruction of justice. Add it to your list. Richard's hand stopped mid-sentence. Preston's breathing grew louder, rougher. You think you've won? He rasped. You think they'll believe you over me? Clara tilted her head, studying him. I don't need belief. I have proof. Outside the office, Officer Keller stood guard. He could hear every word now. Every desperate lie Preston fed himself to stay upright. He'd seen fear before, but not like this. Not in a man who'd ruled over others with money and menace. This was the fear of someone who finally understood that power couldn't buy mercy. Inside, the clock ticked toward 3:41. 2 minutes left. Preston turned on Brock. Say something, damn it. Tell her she's wrong. Brock looked at him with hollow eyes. I can't, his voice cracked. You paid me to lie. You told me Daniel was a threat, that he'd ruin everything if I didn't make it look clean. I told myself I was protecting the Bureau's reputation. I told myself I was doing the right thing. But I wasn't, I was protecting you. You're finished, Preston hissed. You'll go down with her. No, Brock said softly. I'll go down telling the truth. Clara rose to her feet, her presence commanding. That's more integrity than you've shown in your entire career, Mr. Hale. He glared at her, chest heaving. You think this makes you a hero? You destroyed your own career for revenge. She didn't flinch. This isn't revenge. This is restoration. She turned toward the door. Officer Keller, stand clear, please. He obeyed instantly. Clara opened her briefcase one final time, laying out 3 folders across the table like cards in a final game. You buried my father's case with paperwork, she said. Now you'll be buried by your own. The hum of engines cut through the air. Outside, the black SUVs rolled to a stop in perfect formation. Doors opened silently and 12 agents stepped out. Weapons drawn, movements precise. Special Agent Cole Ramsey led them, eyes focused, voice steady over the radio. All units move on my mark. Inside, Preston's phone rang. The sound shattered the silence. He grabbed it like a lifeline. FBI? Preston Hale. We have a situation. Someone impersonating an agent. I need immediate. The voice on the other end interrupted him, calm and efficient. Mr. Hale, this is Special Agent Ramsey. We're aware of your situation. Federal jurisdiction takes effect in 60 seconds. Please remain where you are. Preston's voice cracked. What do you mean takes effect? You're already here? The line went dead. He turned toward Clara, his face pale as death. They're already here. She gave a small nod. Yes, you called them yourself. The lights flickered once. A low hum filled the room. The sound of power shifting hands. Then came the crash. The front doors burst open, glass raining down like shards of judgment. Voices filled the air. FBI, nobody move! The echo shook the marble floors. Every head in the lobby turned toward the entrance as 12 agents poured inside, tactical vests gleaming, weapons lowered but ready. At their front, Cole Ramsey moved with calm authority, scanning the room until his eyes landed on Clara. He stopped. For a moment, the chaos faded. His hand rose to his brow in a sharp salute. Chief Mason, he said, voice steady. Good to see you, ma'am. Every agent in the room followed suit. 12 perfect salutes snapping into the air in unison. Preston's world collapsed. His mouth fell open. No sound came out. Clara returned the salute, her movement slow, precise, reverent. Thank you, Agent Ramsey. You're right on time. He nodded once. We waited for 3:41. Clara touched the old watch on her wrist, the one that had belonged to her father. The second hand was still frozen, the time eternal. Cole's eyes softened. He'd be proud. Clara's voice wavered just for a heartbeat. He would have wanted it done right. Preston stumbled backward, his knees buckling. What is this? He shouted. What's happening? Clara turned to him. The warmth in her tone was gone now. What replaced it was something colder, sharper. Pure justice. This, she said, is case number 7219. Reopened today. You didn't just discriminate against a loan applicant. You denied an FBI section chief conducting an official investigation. You fabricated records. You committed false imprisonment. And you threatened witnesses. Her voice lowered to a blade's edge. That's not banking, Mr. Hale. That's federal crime. Agent Ramsey stepped forward, holding a thick report marked with the official bureau seal. The firearm that killed Agent Daniel Mason was re-examined last month. 2 sets of fingerprints were found. Daniel Mason's on the grip. Brock Sutherland's on the trigger. Brock's head dropped. It's true, he whispered. I pulled the trigger. Preston told me to scare him. He fought back. It happened too fast. I couldn't undo it. Preston turned on him in horror. You idiot, shut up. Brock didn't stop. He paid me to close the case. Said it would all disappear, but it didn't. Agent Ramsey motioned to 2 agents who stepped forward and cuffed Brock without resistance. Then he turned to Preston. Preston Hale, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, racketeering, civil rights violations, and obstruction of justice. Richard tried to back away, but another agent was already behind him. Richard Langford, Ramsey said, you're under arrest for falsifying financial records, discrimination under federal lending laws, and aiding and abetting obstruction. The handcuffs clicked, the metallic sound ringing like a bell through the marble chamber. Clara watched as the men who had buried her father were finally dragged into the light. For 10 years, she'd carried his badge, his notebook, and his unfinished case. For 10 years, she'd prepared for this hour. Preston lifted his head, his voice trembling. Who are you? She leaned down, met his eyes, and said softly, I'm the daughter of the man you murdered. The agent you thought you silenced. And the last person you should have ever crossed. He stared at her, broken, as the agents led him away. The flash of cameras exploded through the glass doors outside. The chaos of truth finally catching up. Inside the bank, everything was still. The briefcase sat open, papers fanned across the counter like the evidence of a nation's conscience. Janet stood near her desk, hands shaking, tears streaming down her face, but her spine straight as iron. Officer Keller stood beside her, his badge heavy on his chest. Justice had arrived, and there were still stories left to finish. The bank had gone quiet after the storm. The flashing lights outside painted the marble walls in pulses of red and blue. Preston Hale and Richard Langford were gone, swallowed by the flashing swirl of justice. But the air inside still hummed with what they left behind: guilt, truth, and the weight of years unspoken. Clara stood alone in the center of the lobby. Her father's watch still rested on her wrist, frozen forever at 3:41. She looked down at it, and for the first time in a decade, she didn't see a reminder of loss. She saw completion. Janet approached slowly, clutching the envelope of evidence to her chest. "Chief Mason," she began, her voice trembling. "I processed your father's loan. I saw the rejection note. High risk, law enforcement applicant. I knew it was wrong, but I didn't stop it." Clara's gaze softened. "You're here now. You printed the records. You turned the light back on. That's what matters." Janet's tears spilled, but there was strength behind them. "Will I go to jail?" "That depends on what you tell the FBI," Clara said honestly. "Truth carries weight. It can condemn or it can redeem. Choose wisely." Janet nodded, gripping the envelope tighter. "Then I'll tell them everything." She walked toward Agent Ramsey, who took the evidence from her with a quiet nod of respect. Clara turned to Keller. He stood near the doorway, hands still, expression unreadable. Then he reached for his badge and removed it, placing it gently on the metal table. "Chief Mason," he said, voice firm. "I apologize for my part in this. I didn't know, but I should have seen it sooner." Clara regarded him for a long moment, then nodded. "You saw it when it mattered, Officer Keller. That's what counts." He gave a slow, relieved smile. "I don't work for them anymore." Clara extended her hand. "Then work for something better. The Bureau needs people who choose what's right when it costs them something." He took her hand, their shake firm and solemn. For Keller, it was more than a gesture. It was the start of something new. Agent Ramsey approached, holding a folder. "The financial records are clear," he said. 29 families were denied credit based on race and background. All foreclosed. All properties resold through Silverline Holdings. Total value stolen, $3.4 million. Clara's chest rose slowly. "My father saw the pattern. That's why they killed him." Ramsey nodded. "Now they'll answer for it." She looked toward the empty chair where her father had once sat 10 years ago, full of hope, believing in fairness. "He believed in the system even when it didn't believe in him," she whispered. "He never stopped fighting to make it better. That's what I inherited from him." Outside, the crowd had grown. News vans, microphones, reporters shouting questions. Preston and Richard were being led through the doors in handcuffs, their once proud faces pale under the flashbulbs. Inside, the employees stood silent, their world crumbling around them. But some of them, Janet, the young teller beside her, even Keller, stood taller now, unburdened. Agent Sloan Donahue approached with a tablet. "Chief Mason, we traced every transaction. Every family is identifiable. We can initiate restitution immediately once the seizure order's filed." Clara scrolled through the list on the screen. Morrison family, Johnson family, Alvarez family. Each name another scar carved into a decade of injustice. "Find them," she said quietly. "All of them. I want to meet them personally." Ramsey hesitated. "That's a lot of pain to reopen." "My father would have looked them in the eye," she replied. "I owe them that." Donahue nodded and made a note. Janet stood nearby, listening. "What will happen to the bank?" she asked. "The building will be seized," Clara said. "The Hale name will be erased. But the people who were hurt, they'll rebuild. That's the difference. Institutions can collapse. People can rise." Ramsey looked at her with quiet pride. "Barrett said something like that once." "Your father." Clara smiled faintly. "He always said justice isn't a moment. It's a process. And today the process just caught up." She reached into her briefcase and pulled out her father's notebook. The last page was a single line written in fading ink. "If I can't finish this, someone will. Justice doesn't belong to one person. It's a relay. Make sure the baton gets passed." Her voice caught. He knew. He knew they were coming for him, and he still wrote this. Ramsey placed a steady hand on her shoulder. He passed it to the right person. The final police car pulled away outside. The echo of sirens faded into the distance. The sun had begun to set, its light pouring through the shattered glass doors, warm and golden. It washed over the lobby like absolution. Clara walked slowly toward the same chair her father had once sat in, the place where his hope had been denied and his life stolen. She rested her hand on the backrest, feeling the cool metal beneath her palm. "You thought you buried him here," she said quietly to the empty room. "But all you buried was your own truth." Janet watched from a few steps away. 10 years, she murmured. "It took 10 years, Clara turned to her, her eyes clear. Justice isn't fast, but it's patient, and it never forgets." She picked up her briefcase, the same one that had carried evidence and memory alike, and walked toward the door. The evening air outside was cool, almost gentle. The chaos had faded into calm. Preston Hale's empire had fallen, but something far greater had risen in its place: accountability. Her phone buzzed. A message from Donahue. "Morrison family located. They said to tell you thank you." Clara stared at the message for a moment, her throat tightening. A family she'd never met thanking her for a father they never knew. She typed back slowly. "Tell them I'll see them tomorrow, and tell them my father would be proud they never gave up." She slipped the phone into her pocket and looked one last time at the bank behind her. The place that had tried to break her family and failed. The place that had finally faced the truth. 10 years, 4 months, and 17 days. Some people say justice delayed is justice denied. Clara knew better. Justice delayed is justice sharpened, refined by time, unbreakable. Her father started the race. She finished it. And somewhere out there, 29 families would wake up tomorrow knowing someone had fought for them. And won. She stepped into her car, set the briefcase beside her, and started the engine. The headlights cut through the dusk as the city stretched ahead of her, wide open, waiting. The watch on her wrist was still frozen at 3:41, but for the first time in 10 years it felt like time was moving again.